Remember, if you think the government won't, they absolutely will. You remember that time the CIA tried to weaponize otters? To be fair, they tried it with a lot of animals, and when Central Intelligence initiated a program to basically turn animals into spies, otters were seen as the most qualified. And they're not wrong, pretty privilege aside, it's a highly intelligent, tube-shaped, tool-using, brush-stroking honey badger that is every bit the predator. Someone said, give him a fedora, he could do a lot for you. Let's make otter agents. Which led to the creation of the Otter Dossier. Side note, whatever they were planning apparently has something to do with MK Ultra. If you think they won't, the dossier highlights some otter flexes like being able to dive 60 feet and stay under more than 5 minutes, carry objects while swimming, and climb ladders. They also found that the aggressive Slinky can open zippers, turn on water taps, discreetly enter and exit boats, and even chew through a zinc sheet. I don't know how they found that. At one point they say, never take food from an otter or suffer severe mauling, and I just know the cost of that knowledge was some poor intern's fingers. There's some cool stuff too, like otters being ticklish at the ribs or babies having to be taught not to be afraid of water. You should definitely check it out for yourself. But there was one line that stood out, and it read like a prophecy. Capable of being trained and becomes devoted to humans, which can lead to their destruction. Whose destruction, you ask? Yes. This is the face of a threat to national security and a fugitive of the justice system. I'm not even kidding, but to get why this is an otter menace, we gotta go back to 2016. It's always 2016. A young female otter was found abandoned and orphaned and was rescued and rehabilitated by Monterey Bay Aquarium, and in 2017, Otter 723 was released back into the wilds of Santa Cruz. Researchers then got reports of a rogue otter swimming up to boats and kayaks, and sure enough, yeah, it was Lady 723. Apparently she'd been getting fish and squid handouts from local animal lovers, not realizing that being friendly with humans now meant the freeloading seafarer would never be fit for the wild, and she was captured and deemed unreleasable. But not before they realized 723 was getting attention from more than just people, cuz she was pregnant, and they weren't about to make the same mistake with her daughter, and would often wear masks and ponchos, you know, looking like they just raided Darth Vader's closet, all to make certain that she wouldn't get attached to humans. She got attached to humans. And a year after Daughter 841 was released, Monterey Bay started getting calls of a surfboard jacking otter. That's right, the same otter they tried so hard to keep away from humans was now going up to humans, and when I say board jacking, it's exactly what it sounds like, and before you think she's playing, that's not a bite of play, that's a bite of purpose. Remember the zinc sheet. So after multiple calls of people sacrificing their boards to this water weasel, officials decided to capture her, but fun fact, an animal recruiter for the CIA is harder to catch than a cold in the Kalahari. They tried to relocate her for months, but every time Outlaw Otter slipped away. She was on the run and swim, but she would have one more plot twist for everyone. Because after being MIA for a minute, 841 was spotted again, but this time with a pup, and because of that, officials gave up on trying to catch her and instead just tried to monitor the mother. Meaning, the board beef has been renewed for at least another generation. Jokes aside, this is a problem, because you know the second she bites someone, 841's becoming a forever 404. And otter jaws are built to humble clams and sea urchins, so it probably wouldn't feel good to get clamped by one. Or 8. Last September, a woman was jogging through Tanjung Aru Park in Sabah, Malaysia, when she was jumped by a pack of river otters. Keep in mind, these are the same assault sausages that can game over a gator. Maria Sela Harun was mauled for 10 minutes straight in what was the park's first known otter attack, and she was taken to the hospital with wounds, cuts, and like a certain CIA agent, a lifelong distrust of otters. The director of wildlife said that the otters had always been around and were never known to be aggressive, but he also said something interesting that I almost missed, that this sudden switch up could be caused by the ill-intentioned goodwill of people. But that was all the way in Malaysia. You don't really have to worry about that over here. The same month, a river otter mauled a child and even dragged him underwater, except this time, it was in Seattle. Now, not to victim blame, but if there's infinite realities, then there's at least one where little Timmy had it coming. Who's to say these stories aren't just media plants from anti-otter propaganda? Maybe the otter's not being fairly represented. I'm not trying to spread misinformation, that'd be an otter travesty, which is why I'm working with Ground News. Ground News is an app and website created by a former NASA engineer who saw a very real problem with the way we consume information and how heavily it shapes our worldviews. She said, "I'll do it myself," and created a simple way to compare different perspectives and come to your own conclusion. Every day, Ground News collects thousands of articles from around the world and organizes them by story, so you can see how many outlets have covered a story, how factual they usually are, who owns the source, and you even get an overall bias distribution. I really like that part because it's easy to feel like everything has some kind of agenda. Like even the things you wouldn't think of as political are somehow political. Like wolves. Wolves are highly political animals and not just Blitzer. Obviously because of the whole wolf rancher beef. Well, here you can see that Colorado's looking to relocate a wolf pack blamed for livestock attacks was reported by 22 news outlets, with most of the reporting coming from the left. The left headlines seem to focus on current efforts to recapture the wolves, while the right headlines explicitly mention it's because these wolves were killing livestock. Ground News basically forces you to break out of your echo chamber and see the whole story. In fact, there's even a blind spot feature to read up on any stories one side might not have covered. Like if you only read right, you might miss that Denmark's converting 15% of farmland into forests. They're also taxing farting cows and pigs. Yeah, you know what? That is a blind spot. Ground News gives you thousands of stories all across the political spectrum to help you form your own opinion, as well as fill in the gaps you might get from only ever hearing from one end. And it's really helpful for me since half my job involves sitting in front of a screen researching stuff. And for Black Friday, they're offering all my viewers 50% off the same Ground News Vantage subscription plan I'm using, all the features included. It's their biggest sale of the year, so go to groundnews.com/casualgeo, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description to subscribe for less than $5 a month. And once you do, read up on all those articles about otter attacks, and you might notice something. 723 was raised by people, fed by people, and ultimately got too comfortable with people. Her daughter likely also got handouts from humans. And Maria Cela got jumped by an onslaught of otters in a park where people were likely already regularly feeding them. Now don't get me wrong, it's still a warmongering, waterproof Wolverine weaponizing the power of plurality. But it seems they don't really become a threat until they lose their fear of humans. You ever hear of human arrogance? Probably not, because I just made it up. Human arrogance is walking in a forest scared, whole time the forest is scared because you're in it walking. The whole they're more afraid of you than you are of them, that's real, and it's scientifically proven. Some mother bears will purposely raise their kids closer to humans, knowing the best male bear repellent is proximity to people. Jacob and Tibu were two lions that made a record-breaking 1-mile swim through croc and hippo-filled waters. I actually talked about it in the last video. What I didn't tell you is they both could have taken the much easier land bridge across, but that would have involved coming into contact with humans, and apparently they'd rather run the aquatic gauntlet in the dark than risk a run-in with a bipedal pale ape. But, speaking of lions, it's scientifically proven that animals are more terrified of us than a literal 400-pound maned population control. In an experiment led by Professor Leanna Zanette, scientists planted hidden camera speakers near watering holes that would automatically get triggered every time an animal got close. Basically, they'd be recording different animals' reactions to the sound of lions versus people speaking the local tongue. And with lions preferring to ambush prey near watering holes, you'd expect a growl to send any creature running for the hills. Instead, 95% of the animals recorded were more afraid of the sound of humans than a stalking lion. Animals that included giraffes, impala, kudu, leopards, and even chronic lion Chutoy the hyena packed it up faster when they heard humans. The only animal that didn't was the literal biggest one alive with toenails. Even during dry season, animals typically evacuated 40% faster hearing humans compared to if it was a hypothetical predator. Because to a majority of animals, we are the predator. But to me, the craziest part of the experiment was the reveal that animals were more fearful of people just speaking than the sounds of literal gunshots and hunting dogs. Meaning it's gotten to the point where people see the mere presence of a human more threatening than the sounds of someone actually getting put on a shirt. So you know when an animal has zero fear of humans, something is very wrong, and it usually only has one outcome, and no one showed that more than Freya. Freya was actually a walrus, famous for appearing in Oslo Fjord, Norway, several hundred miles south of where you'd expect a giant Arctic blubber ball. She was the first walrus in the Netherlands in 23 years, and pictures would go viral of her lounging on and sometimes sinking boats. And with her being friendly enough to approach people, the walrus would become a national and then international figure and was given her name. But you already know we can't have nice things. Freya didn't fear humans, and unfortunately the feeling was mutual, with crowds of people getting way too close to her, people trying to swim with her, and even at some point pelting stuff at her. Officials tried warning the public of, the health risks of playing with a 1,300-pound ship-retiring tusk seal, but even after Freya literally chased a woman into water, of course nobody listened. Officials were banking on Freya leaving on her own, but she didn't, and neither did her crowd. In fact, it only got worse. So the night of August 12, 2022, 4 government officials patrolled the marina with a rifle, and by sunrise, Freya was, Now the situation's a lot more complicated than I just made it sound, so I do recommend checking out Kay Passionate's video on the matter. She's a friend of the channel, she actually works with walruses, and I feel like she's a little more qualified than, internet backwards hat guy. But if you're asking what I think, man, look, I want to see both sides, and I kind of do. Airdropping an aquatic animal, especially one the weight of a buffalo, especially when tranquilizing isn't even an option, is a lot harder than you think. There's a good chance to stress with a flatline Freya anyway. It would only take her bumping into a child once to turn both into a hashtag. But if you're really asking me, I don't think euthanasia should have been on the table. Anything would have been better. Like, worst comes to worst, hot take, if someone actively chooses to cozy up to a 1,000-pound half-evolved snow hippo and gets past tense in the process, you really can only charge it to Darwin. And I don't know if it's a sea puppy thing gone too far, but I do not know when people decided to stop taking seals and sea lions seriously. It's basically a rebranded beach bear. It really is like we went back to 2016 and harambeed ourselves all over again. And for being named after a Norse goddess, Freya got done nasty for a walrus whose only crime was trusting people. And now, all that's left of her is a statue named, fittingly, For Our Sins. So yeah, you probably couldn't tell, but the Freya stuff pissed me off, especially since I swear we're about to do it again. Neil is a southern elephant seal that went viral for being an adorable menace to the people of Hobart, Tasmania. Neil's lore is his mom likely got lost, and instead of having him on Macquarie Island with a colony of other seals, instead he spawned nearly 1,000 miles away on the Tasman Peninsula. Two big problems: one, this meant Neil would be hardwired to return to the same beach on Salem Bay, and two, with a distinct lack of other seals, Neil would interact with anything that moved, including people, dogs, and even cars, which meant Neil had absolutely zero fear of people. One woman even had to call out of work after Neil fell asleep in front of her car and literally sealed her in her own house. And with southern elephant seals maxing out at nearly 20 feet long and over 8,000 pounds, it's one of those things that's gonna be real cute until it isn't. And like clockwork, there's already reports of children harassing Neil, as well as people violating his space for selfies. It's gotten to the point where officials are begging the public to leave him alone, to not post him or share his whereabouts, basically gatekeeping the seal, and some of that might be on me. I literally talked about Neil earlier this year in a video with millions of views putting his name out. Now there's a chance Neil gets loved to death by the same people he trusted. So yeah, losing the fear of people could be a death sentence for an animal, but for some species, it got them erased. The Caribbean monk seal went extinct in the 50s after being hunted into oblivion, and their biggest downfall was their distinct lack of fear and curiosity towards people. Columbus even noted how weirdly chill they were, and for that, they got slaughtered. The dodo is a plus-size pigeon in the past that also got decimated by sailors, because evolving on an island with no predators meant they had no concept of self-defense. They were cooked. The gray auk, which isn't a penguin, also famously had no fear of humans, and after going from 6 million in numbers to nothing in about 300 something years, yeah, we gave them every reason to. There was even an account of 2 ships murking 1,000 auks in only half an hour. And believe it or not, it's still happening. The harpy eagle's a popular target for poachers since they'll often just sit on a perch and let them approach. Also, being big enough to be confused for a fursona means some people will just shoot it out of curiosity. So yeah, animals need to be afraid of humans. But what can you do about that? Well, quick pop quiz. You're being stared down by a coyote. Should you A, make yourself look bigger, B, spray him with water, C, cause an absolute f***ing scene, or D, put the fear of God in Wiley? Well, if you picked any one of these, you're wrong. It's actually E. Yes. You see, in college, hazing is something that gets fraternities shut down. In the wild, hazing is scaring an animal enough to factory reset its behavior and make it want to avoid anything human. Obviously, there are exceptions, like if the coyote's hurt, sick, or with kids, then you want to fall back because they might just call your bluff. It's not to hurt them, quite the opposite. Making them prejudiced towards people is the nicest thing you could do for them. Because when you feed a wild animal, you're almost certainly marking them for death. And sometimes it's not just theirs. Okay, let's do this one last time. Baboons in Cape Town have gotten bold enough to mug women and children, break into houses, and even commit carjackings. And the most likely reason was tourists kept feeding baboons until not only they became habituated with people, after associating humans with food, they started demanding it. And like with 841, this is the other side of forgetting the fear of humans, and baboons might not even be the worst offenders. Macaques in India have been living alongside humans for centuries, and not only do they get the benefit of easy food, the monkeys are also revered in Hinduism. But then you had the same issue of expectations leading to aggression, except the monkeys took it a step further. These monkeys are master pickpockets that are smart enough to recognize items of value, snatch them, and then use them as ransom, and negotiating food is the only way you get your stuff back. The smartest ones will even give your stuff back one at a time just to maximize profit. But you know, brute force works too. In 2007, the mayor of Delhi was attacked by a group of monkeys and pushed off his terrace to his death. Ironically, the only thing the macaques are afraid of is an even bigger monkey called a langur, and since owning them as pets is illegal, yep, your eyes are correct. Delhi's parliament actually hired men to cosplay as giant marauding monkeys to scare the real monkeys straight. So yeah, I'll die on the hill that feeding wild animals is killing them softly, and I would know, because I did it once. When I was 10, I started feeding squirrels at a local park, and there was one in particular that really appreciated it, to the point where he'd come up to me even when I was empty-handed. I either named him Tyler or Tyrone, I genuinely don't remember. Well, one day Ty just would not stop following me. No matter where or how far I went, this rodent panhandler was on me like a homing pigeon. It was to the point where he was following me all the way home, and I wasn't allowed to have pets, and I damn sure wasn't allowed to bring pretty privileged rats off the streets, so what did I do? I took a nut, launched it, it bounced off a reservoir. I live next to a reservoir, by the way. It landed in the street, my guy Ty followed, and as you can guess, the story ended with one less squirrel. I was not okay for a while. And don't worry, I get my karma later in life when I got jumped by a pack of squirrels in the middle of New York for half a peanut butter sandwich. And yes, every word of that was true. Like an idiot, I fed 1, 1 turned to 2, 2 became 6, 6 spawned 12, and that is unironically the most I've ever been afraid of 12. So what's the moral here? what can be killed with hate can also be smothered by love, that animals are best appreciated from a distance, that the CIA created weapons of utter destruction. Nah. How about leave these seals the f alone? But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Drink water, hug your mother, touch grass, call your brother. If something happens to Neil, I'ma really show y'all a crash out. And I'ma see y'all in the next one.